I don't know if that's part of the tuning process or not. Either way, I think it's time that we upgrade this cooling system. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull out the new radiator. Hopefully this is the right one. Find out. Guessing these are relays for the fans. Oh yeah, she looking good. Once again, I want to give a huge shout out to Alloyworks for sending me this. They didn't have to, but they wanted to. Yeah, if you guys haven't yet, go check them out. Alloyworks, link is going to be in the description below. Honestly, these are very affordable for what they are. I think this one runs about $300 if I'm not mistaken. I'll double check, but yeah, I think it's about $300, and like this thing looks nice. I mean, welds aren't like particularly impressive or anything, but I mean, you can tell that that's at least handmade. I'll give it that. But I mean, other than that, it's a very economical aluminum radiator. They have them for a lot of makes and models, so definitely go check out Alloyworks. But let's get this bad boy popped in here. I'm gonna start draining coolant. You know, we'll get this bad boy in here. And voila, brand new aluminum 4-row radiator. We just got to wire up those fans, which they did include a nice little relay kit for. They also included a temp sensor in case you wanted to switch this off of the temp sensor. Not exactly sure how to do that, but nonetheless, they gave it to you. Yeah, this thing is actually really nice. It didn't actually fit 100%. As you can see, like, we're a little wonky, but I don't think that's the company's fault. When they asked me what year and make of vehicle, I said a 76 C30. They said we don't have one for that, and I said okay, well then give me a 76 C10, thinking all square bodies are the same. Turns out that the C30 one might be a little bit taller. I don't know, you square body guys, let me know in the comments if that's the case. Either way though, I mean, I just put a couple blocks underneath it, and I know what you guys are thinking about using the wood blocks. You're probably thinking, Giovanni, when did this turn into a SEMA build? But I promise you guys, I'm not getting fancy on you. It's just to make the radiator work. But anyhow, this is all in here. It's solid, like it's not going anywhere. The next thing we have to do, like I said, is hook up those relays to control the fans, and that should be about it. We should be done. And there it is. After a few days of frustration, lots of troubleshooting, just a lot of going back over what I've already done, the truck is running all right. It's not perfect. I think it'll be close to perfect once I get a good custom tune in there. I need to actually download like the Holley software and actually start looking and pulling logs and stuff like that. But for starting up and driving down the street, it's doing okay. There's a couple lean spots still. It's not accelerating very great right off the line, but once it's cruising, it's all right. Now, I'm not gonna be one of those guys that just blames everything on the Holley system. I think the Holley system does have its flaws, but for the price range, kind of just part of the territory. Let me open the hood for you guys so we can go over kind of some things. Right now, this is the configuration that it's working best in. I don't have an air cleaner, as you can tell. That's because I'm not planning on driving it really far anywhere or for long distance. And that's just because I'm waiting on a couple other things before I put that back on. And I guess we'll talk about it since we're here. So the biggest issue with this system is that right here is the ECU. As you notice, within maybe a foot of it, we have a distributor with spark plug wires. Now, spark plug wires tend to give off a lot of RFI, radio frequency interference, or EMI, electromagnetic interference. What that does is that causes the Holley system to freak out. It's not as bad on big blocks and small blocks and GM vehicles because the distributor is in the back behind the ECU. If this was a Ford, the distributor would be right here pointed right at that ECU, and I hear that there's a lot more issues with it. Now, in the instructions, you have to read them carefully. I'm gonna go ahead and start stating the issues that I had and I fixed right off the bat. One, as you guys saw, I upgraded all my grounds. Square bodies, or at least this one, only had a single ground going from this point on the alternator bracket right here to the battery. That was it as far as grounds go. That's not really grounding anything. You gotta figure that this alternator bracket isn't even actually part of the engine block. It's tied into the engine block with threads, but that ground basically has to travel from here, through the engine block, through the engine mounts, through the frame, and then through the cab of the truck. That's not very efficient. So, as you guys saw, I added some grounds. I added a new ground from the battery to this post here. From this post, we have a jumper wire going from there to the frame, and then from the frame, we have one going to the engine itself, the engine block. Now, a couple other things could probably be upgraded. This battery cable seems fairly new, and it's a decent sized gauge, so I think we'll probably keep that. We might shorten it a little bit, because as you can see, there's a lot of slack in that, but that should be fine. Another thing is, I ended up kind of going back over all of this wiring, and I might do it again. This is just what works right now. I think I already showed you guys, but like I separated everything, right? The main things we need to keep apart would be the white wire that goes to the CDI box. That wire is riddled with interference. The next biggest problems would be these gray and purple wires. These things are also riddled with interference. We also went back and crossed our orange and brown wires together, the ones that go to the coil. We crossed them so that way that would try to cut down on some of the interference that we were getting from that. And then, as you can see, I kind of made everything go along the firewall, but separated everything at the same time, if that makes sense. Now, here's a couple things that I bought. I can probably keep the engine just the way it is right now, but now that we've gone through all this trouble, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm a little bit scared. I'm not gonna lie, this sniper system didn't induce a lot of confidence in me from the get-go. And that's just because of the root of the cause, which is EMI. EMI is going to be very hard to diagnose and very hard to kind of guess as to when it's gonna come back. Now, if you have a good foundation, good grounds, good electricity, good shielding, good everything else, you should be fine. But there's always that chance that something gets loose, something happens, and you end up with an engine that's not starting, engine that dies randomly on the highway, etc., etc. I think that's kind of the main flaw with this system, is that the ECU is right here in the middle of everything. It's in the middle of the heat, it's in the middle of all this electronics going on. Not a great place to put an ECU, if you ask me. Most stock ECUs that you see on EFI vehicles, they're not placed on the intake manifold. They're not, you know, right in the middle of everything. They're off to the side of the engine bays. They're underneath everything. They're tucked away somewhere where it's safe. So we have to think about that going forward. So some things that I bought, and I'm not gonna lie, I've spent another probably $300, $400, $500 on this stuff. I did notice right out of the gate, my alternator's not great. It looks like a newer unit, but this is gonna be the old, I forget what they're called, DS10 alternators. It's basically the stock replacement for this truck. These trucks from the factory, I mean, what's the most you're running? You're running an HEI maybe? I don't even think it would have had an HEI in 76. You're running a distributor, you're running an AM radio, and you're running a pair of halogen lamps. Not very much demand on an alternator, but you add a sound system like this truck has, you add an HEI like this truck has, you add a CDI box, high output ignitions, an ECU, and that all starts drawing amperage from the alternator. So what I noticed on the Holley system is that our voltage that we're cranking out at idle is only around 12.5. So I bought a new alternator. I bought I can't even remember what kind of alternator it is, like a 140 amp, newer style alternator. It's a common swap. We're gonna swap that out, upgrade our alternator, and that's gonna give us an overall better electronic system. Because in addition to the alternator, the old style alternators give off a lot of EMI themselves. So upgrading to a newer style unit just has better windings, better capability to reduce the EMI coming from the alternator. In addition to that, the other expensive thing I bought were the MSD 8.5 superconductor spark plug wires. Those things are not cheap. They're $120, but they offer the best EMI shielding for spark plug wires that I can find today. So I think those are going to be a huge improvement. In addition to that, I've bought some shielding tape. I don't think we're going to need it, but I bought some just in case there's a stubborn wire somewhere that's just giving off too much EMI. There's a few things I noticed right off the bat with the system that I didn't like. One of them is our fault. I bought a new throttle cable because ours wasn't really great. It's not the greatest, it's old, cracking, whatever. So I bought a new throttle cable so that would be smooth again. As you can see, I have 2 return springs because it was actually sticking at one point. So I definitely recommend putting return springs on this. I don't know if it requires them or not, but it helped in my case. And then to kind of resolve some of the other throttle issues I had, we went ahead and bought a progressive linkage that should be coming in. So that replaces this part right here. And what that allows you, it'll only open 2 throttle blades at a time as you are at about 40% throttle. And after 40%, it goes ahead and opens up all 4 throttle blades. So that'll kind of help with fuel economy. It'll help with the feel of the pedal. It'll just help out, you know, quite a bit all around. That is a cheap upgrade. That's only about $15 for some Holley linkages. And then the throttle cable, again, probably another $15. I just bought a couple other odds and ends. I bought some really nice spark plug cover things to keep the wires all in check, so that way they're not flopping around all over the place. And yeah, I mean, that's mostly it. New spark plug wires and then new spark plugs as well. And that's honestly what I should have done from the beginning. If you're gonna order one of these kits, I would just recommend going through all that stuff right away too. Order some resistor type spark plugs, superconductor wires. Don't use solid core wires. These wires actually aren't bad, but they're not the greatest. Go through all your wiring, separate everything, make sure that none of the ignition wires are even getting close to those other ones. Like I said, I'm probably gonna go back and change a few things. I might draw a different power source for the ECU than I'm using for the CDI box, for example, and then go over your electrical system. Add way more grounds than you think you're gonna need. I had these many grounds, and then last night I went ahead and added 1 ground from the intake to the firewall. I don't know how well you can see it. Even though it's just a small, you know, 10 gauge wire, that did help out quite a bit, I noticed. And then, you know, you're gonna wanna upgrade things as you put the system in. I decided to go with a new radiator. Once again, thank you to Alloyworks for sending me that. That's just gonna help keep the engine cool, especially because we're gonna be idling this engine a lot while we're tuning. We're gonna be doing a lot of different ranges of driving, and you don't want an old junky radiator kind of heating up the engine, overheating the engine, stuff like that. You could run into lean spots while you're doing this process, and you don't wanna have an old radiator heat up to 250 degrees while you're trying to do this. Electric fans, that's basically a given. I mean, we're upgrading all this stuff. We might as well add some electric fans to keep the engine cool and reduce some of that parasitic draw off the front of the engine. And then comes kind of the tuning process. You guys saw a lot of that when I was doing the troubleshooting and stuff. I'm not gonna do a video on that. I would recommend watching all the Holley videos because I'm gonna leave something out and it's gonna get you guys in a bad situation. Follow the instructions to a T. I did not. After you put so many things on, you usually just throw the instructions to the side and start winging it. You cannot do this here. You gotta read through them. You gotta do everything as it's asking for. Like I said, I think the biggest flaw with this system is that Holley gears it towards a market of people using carburetors. And I know I've got some heat for saying this before, but the guys that are running carburetors and distributors and that are already scared of EFI, I say scared in quotations because I know you're not actually scared of it. It's just something new, something different. Those guys would run into problems like I did and lose their shit, and they would blame all of EFI forever for it. I feel like this system kind of contributes to a lot of hate that EFI already has. So you got to be a little bit open to learning some new things, learning a little bit about EFI principles, and going from there. This isn't a carburetor. You can't just turn a screw and make it leaner or richer. The system's going to do a lot of that for you, but at some point you have to step in and coax it a little bit better. So I'm just gonna give it one more start here because I'm pretty sure this video has been long-winded. Turn the key, the system turns on, it primes the fuel pump, it does all that stuff. And I noticed my starter is kind of starting to give out. I don't know if it's the starter giving out or if I'm too advanced on my ignition or something, but sometimes it's not always reliable. That time it was. You can tell there's a little bit of an extended crank, but nothing crazy. It's not firing off like an LS engine or anything, but it's pretty consistent. And that's really it. I mean, you got to do the wizard and all that first, but once you do the wizard, it'll sit here. I have it commanded to 750 RPM. Once this thing gets warmed up, it drops right down to 750. My IAC position and all that's kind of staying where it needs to be. I need to do a little bit finer tuning, but everything else is just working all right. And I mean, it sounds pretty good if you ask me. So I think that's it for this video. It's getting dark again. I don't want to prolong this video any longer. My name is Giovanni. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys have any questions, any at all, feel free to comment down below. You can hit me up on Instagram at Giovanni Dante. Message me on Facebook, facebook.com/Giovanni Dante Garrego. If you guys can, drop a like, hit that subscribe button. It helps me out tremendously. Yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. We will be seeing more of the spaghetti hauler very soon on the channel. I'll keep posting videos as long as you guys keep watching them.
YouTube.